Welcome, everyone, to Boxing Scene Today here at the Pro Box TV studio. So, Brian Norman Jr., only 24 years old, trying to make an impression in Japan with a great performance. We got that and then some with a fifth-round knockout over Jin Sasaki. But what does that do to the 147-pound division? To help me break it down in studio, I have the champ, Chris Algieri, Paulie Malignaggi, not with us today, and Robert Garcia joining us to give us the tactical insight. Chris, I know you're going to do some shadow boxing because you do that whenever you see a great performance, but look at the abilities of Brian Norman Jr. knocking out Sasaki, knocked him down twice in the first round. A hurricane of offense in this fight. Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah, I mean, we spoke a lot about this in the preview show that we did leading up to the event. And we said, no, Jin Sasaki can be a dangerous guy. He's going to come to fight. He can make it a fun fight. And listen, he certainly did that. But Brian Norman was just on a different level, just better in every way. Was bigger, was stronger, was sharper, looked more comfortable with what he wanted to do. And at the end of the day, Sasaki just couldn't take the power. I mean, I couldn't believe the size difference. I was really surprised how small Jin Sasaki looked in there. And we actually alluded to Brian Norman physically coming into his own maturity-wise, and we're starting to see that now. He's a real welterweight. He is as sharp as he's ever been, and man, the guy can punch. And we spoke about the negatives of a potential fight in Japan. You're not going to get the live eyes watching you on primetime American soil. But guess what? You score a highlight reel knockout, doesn't matter.
It's viral.
That's going to live forever now, and everyone's going to see it. So, I mean, hats off to Team Norman. They made a lot of, some people would argue, dubious decisions leading up to this position. But guess what? It worked out swimmingly, and they knocked it out of the park.
All right, Robert, I don't have Paulie Malignaggi in studio today, so I need some negativity. Was there anything you saw that any mistakes? I mean, Norman did eat some big punches against the ropes, against a guy whose power he didn't respect. Did you see any real weaknesses in this fight for Brian Norman Jr.?
Look, it was a title fight. It was a fight that every fighter goes in there knowing that they're going to take a risk, and Norman did, but Norman did it the right way. He was smart about it. He blocked, took some punches, but it was no big deal for him. He was ready to go out there and perform. Yes, it was not in the States. Yes, many people didn't get to see it. But right now with the knockout going around, everybody's seeing that. At least they're seeing the knockout. It was one of those knockout of the year type of knockout. So he's in a great position right now. That made he made a big statement. I think he's in position to rule over the welterweight division, especially if Boots Ennis vacates his titles. The welterweight division is open for him. He'll be the man at welterweight. But we'll see what kind of challenges are out there for him. I don't see many challenges for him. Maybe in the future, moving up in weight for the bigger challenges. But at welterweight, he's going to dominate. He's going to control. Maybe not get that huge fights. I don't think Ryan Garcia is going to want to fight him. I don't think Devin Haney is going to want to fight him. So what's out there for him? Maybe defend his title a couple times and move up in weight.
Well, let's talk a little bit about something that really stood out to me as I was watching the fight. He knocked down Sasaki twice in round number one, took a deep breath, went back to the well, didn't rush the finish, didn't push him that hard in round number two. But this is a mature performance. He didn't just show power. He took his time to set up everything right. You as a coach, Robert, how much do you value that in a young fighter?
Look, that's something that comes from the gym, from training. His dad working his corner and guiding him throughout training camp. We practice stuff like that. We tell our fighters, you drop him, you got to know if he's definitely completely hurt, then go for the finish. But be patient, take your time, especially the first couple of rounds. The first couple of rounds, they're always going to be dangerous because your opponent's fresh. One punch could hurt you. And if he dropped his opponent in the first round, you don't know if it was because the guy was cold, came in cold, maybe a little bit off guard or something, and just one of those flash knockdowns. You have to be very prepared for that. So we prepare our fighters for all that. When it happens in the first or second round, it's something that you got to think that your opponent might not be that hurt. So that's why he was very patient, took his time, and look, it took a few more rounds later, and he got a very, very nice knockout, and really, really put him in a position where everybody's going to be talking about.
I'm going to peel back the curtain just a little bit here, Chris. Something that always occurs to me, and I got to give credit to the man Teddy Atlas about this. Do you remember It was Zab Judah was making his comeback, and he was on Tuesday Night Fights for ESPN. All right, I always watch it, and I remember Teddy Atlas was a commentator, and obviously in the comeback on that trail, Zab Judah looked very, very good, and he said, "This is the kind of guy you want your guy to come back and fight, game but not dangerous," and I always think that. Sasaki was not game but not dangerous. This was a dangerous puncher, and he was. This wasn't a game guy, and we've seen him before. Like, he's game, he's tough, but he's not going to knock you out with one shot. Sasaki had real professional power, and he was able. Norman was able to neutralize it completely.
I think that might have been Omar Weiss that you're talking about, actually, who's an Argentinian fighter. Really tricky, but not a puncher. And so I think that's where Teddy was alluding to. But yeah,
We remember that fight.
Jin Sasaki's a puncher.
Yeah.
He's a puncher. He's in there. Okay, so we learned he wasn't a welterweight. You know, he did lose at 140. I heard he was struggling with the weight, had 6 KOs in a row at welterweight, but definitely looked small in there. But the guy can still punch. I mean, he landed some shots. And Coach Robert, I was going to go back to what you were saying earlier about, he dropped the guy twice in the first round. Yeah, maybe he was cold, but he still could be dangerous. It seemed to me like Jin actually landed some left hooks, some good shots, and Brian Norman was like, all right, he's not ready yet. I'm gonna go back to the well, get behind my jab, touch him to the body, and eventually he's gonna go. I mean, I'm sure they didn't plan to get a highlight reel 1-punch KO the way they did, but listen, I thought that was beautiful. Yeah, you push it. All right. The guy's still got some life in him. Let me pull back, go back to the game plan. I'll get him down the line. He just looked like he was brimming with confidence, and he had the time on his side. He dropped a guy twice in the first round. It's like, all right, I could hurt him. And then, he came back a little, but I think at the end of the day, Norman probably was had some holes in his defense because he's like, this guy really can't hurt me. He's not big enough. He's not strong enough. And he was just dialed in. And I mean, all in all, it looked like a fantastic performance. Exactly what you wanted to do. Top Rank looked extremely happy from what you could see afterwards. Colin Moretti was in the ring. They were all speaking about them. Bob Arum came on camera and said that he fought a perfect fight. So a lot of good movements made in Brian Norman's career. And on top of that, he's been speaking directly to the Japanese people. He said, listen, I'll come back. I had a great time here. He just posted on his social media moments ago about the samurai warrior lifestyle. I came out there to fight like a warrior. So now he's really endearing yourself to those fans over there. Very, very smart movement from a very young guy. Youngest champion in the game today.
And also what? Big money. When you fight, yes. It's always a big payday.
I heard a little insight about that as well. They did well.
It did well.
Did well for this one.
He did well. So, Robert, I got to ask you, as a coach looking at it from the outside, are you concerned about the punches he took? Or was it like Chris said, he felt the power and went, this guy can't really hurt me. It led to this prioritization of the offense over the defense. Does that concern you in the long run? Or is it just, a decision he made in this fight, you think?
No, it doesn't. Not at all. It doesn't concern me at all. I think he's, he's one of those fighters that is ready, prepared to take the biggest challenges. He took those punches just the way a real solid champion does. I'm not saying he did it on purpose, but everybody gets hit, and he took them well. He knew how to respond, took his time. After dropping his opponent twice, like I said before, still took his time to when the right hook landed in the 5th round, and it was out. I think this man is ready, to compete against anybody at that division. Like I said earlier, I don't know if there's going to be any big challenges for him. That's why Japan is good for him. Big money out there, and he's always going to be the bigger guy. In the States, Mexico, we kind of get our fighters to lose that weight, to take that body advantage. Fighters in Japan, they don't do it that way. They kind of fight at the normal weight where they walk around at. So that's a big difference too. That's why we've seen a big difference.
When you look at it, Chris, obviously you competed in kickboxing, huge in Japan. I competed in MMA, big in Japan. When you ask Japanese fighters about fighting Americans, one of the things they say is, God, they're big. Every time I talk to a Japanese fighter, like, Japan versus America, goes, man, the size advantage, the disparity. When I fight other Japanese fighters, they're roughly my size. When I fight an American, the weight cutting has gotten so good. A lot of them come from different backgrounds where they're used to big cuts. Is that an issue for Japanese fighters? As you said, we saw it in this fight where it looked like a huge size disparity.
I mean, Robert just alluded to that. The guys in the Western world seem to take the weight cuts a lot more seriously, a lot more aggressively, I should say. So yeah, it's going to be an advantage, but the Japanese, they're basing their fighting styles on technique and ruggedness. They're tough. They're all tough. You can always expect them to be tough, and we saw that in Jin Sasaki. But lately, this new age of Japanese fighters are super technical, and they're taking a lot of the Western flavor from styles. You know, they're going down to the body a lot better. They've got really good sharp jabs, and we're seeing this with Inoue, who's actually exposing the Eastern style to the Western world. So you're seeing a bit of a hybrid from these guys. These guys are going almost like how the Cubans are adapting, and they're getting way more aggressive now than they used to be. The Japanese, I think, is getting way more technical than they used to be. It's not just about being tough. Sure, they're still tough. They have that samurai warrior way. They've got that warrior spirit. That's never going to leave them. I think that's a country thing in their blood. But in terms of their style as boxers, they're becoming much more technical. Are they going to take the Western world's idea about weight cuts in the future? Potentially. I mean, it could very well be. So you're going to see a little bit some of these bigger Japanese fighters. But in terms of this fight, it wasn't size, man. Brian Norman was just, he was locked in. He was just locked in. He was sharper. He was faster. He was ready for what Jin brought. He saw that Jin threw wide shots. And you could see he would just pull back and throw the hook right over. Boom. I'm going to throw a shorter clip, tighter hook that's going to clip him. And he did it every time. That's how he dropped him in the first round. That's how he hurt him later. Even the shots that Jin landed, it was the response by Norman, which was the bigger, heavier, cleaner punches. Those wide shots, you lose power during that trajectory. When a guy like Norman is throwing that short, bang, bang, those kind of shots, those are actually heavier. And we saw that in this fight. So I'm not saying it was a size thing as much as it was a technical superiority thing from Brian Norman.
What I'm curious about, Robert, you are a student of the game. You've been in this forever, not just as a trainer, but as a fan. When you look at the welterweight division, the history of it, is there anyone Norman reminds you of? I was seeing elements of all these other different fighters. He's fast, but he doesn't have those Sugar Ray Leonard combinations. Great left hook, reminding me a little bit of Roberto Duran. When you look at 147, who does he remind you of style-wise?
Look, he's a fighter that has a little bit of everything. You know, he could box. He definitely has great power. Fights great with his left. Uses that left beautiful. The way we seen it last night with that knockout. He's one of those fighters that he's gonna have his own. We're not gonna remember him as, oh, he fights just like Duran. He fights just like Leonard. No, I think he's got a little bit of everything that combined together just makes him a great fighter. He's proven it now. There's not the challenges out there to put him out there with the big names yet. I think he will get there, but not yet, because right now there's not too much money in the States. There's not too much money for him, for somebody to challenge him, because he's still not that great name in the States. But he will get there, and he will get those challenges. But I think he's one of those guys that has a little bit of everything. He's got great power. He's got good reflex, good insight. Left hand to the body, left hook to the head. I think he's a complete fighter, and a little bit of everything makes him a much better fighter.
Robert, I agree completely, and he's from Atlanta, Georgia. That's kind of a hybrid area. So you've got a mix of you've got the Latin fighters that you get from Florida, right? That kind of gets up into Atlanta. But also you've got the East Coast style boxer that also tends to lead toward Atlanta. You're gonna have that fight. Then you got those Ohio guys. You got those guys in the Midwest. So you get a nice conglomeration of all those styles, and you kind of see that in Brian Norman. Yes, he can jab. Yes, he's got a good counter right hand. Yes, he can catch and shoot. He's got good reactivity, like you said. He's physically strong. He doesn't move a whole lot. He doesn't even move around the ring a lot. Really plants his feet for that power. So I agree. I'm racking my brain about what fighter in the past he reminded me of, but I agree, Robert. It's a lot of different styles that he employed, and I think a lot of that has to do from the area that he came from.
I see that Roy Jones left hook a bit too. He kind of last it up, triple.
Sure, yeah, last one was diving, jumping, and he actually put some extra oomph on the end of that.
When you look at it, it looks like Jaron Ennis moving up. We'll discuss that in a separate show. But yeah, Mario Barrios as champion. Does it make sense, Robert, if you're handling right now Brian Norman Jr., you talk about the lack of challenges, unify the belts? Is that what you're looking at right now? Are you looking at maybe some big money opponents overseas? If you're handling Brian Norman Jr., is it about collecting titles right now?
Look, depending on how they want it. If they want to collect belts, they could do it and maybe become undisputed. Because he's got the talent, he's got the skills to do it. But if they're after money fights, which this one going to Japan makes me believe that that's what they're looking for. So overseas would be great for him, for us to see him fight overseas and get paid very well. But if he wants to, do his thing and become undisputed, then he might take a little bit less money getting through that process, but becoming undisputed or a unified champion will make him a superstar and make him a big name. And the big paydays will come after that. So either way, I would be happy. I'm going to be happy to continue watching his fights because this kid is somebody that I want to keep following and I want to keep watching because he can fight. He can really fight.
He's the goods.
Now, we have talked about it. Let me button this with you, Chris. I want your opinion. At 24, the leaps we've seen over the last couple fights with Brian Norman Jr. We talk about certain fighters peak at 21, right? Others peak in their early 30s. This kid's trajectory, what do you think the ceiling is for him and his technique?
I think it's really they're in the driver's seat, and you're seeing that even with the movements they've made in the past 6 to 12 months, in terms of the business decisions that they've made. I believe he's coming into his physical own now. He's finding his prime. Technically, everything's coming together. All the things that he worked on with his father, throughout his entire life, and his build up, because he had that slow build over, like the old school way, where we're going to get 20, 25 fights before we get to that position where we're going to fight for a title. A lot of builder fights, a lot of learning experiences. So you're seeing all of that. But yeah, I think I agree with Robert. I mean, he's someone to watch. I really think he is the goods. And I said on our preview show, this is a fight that I want to see some tactical adjustments. I want to see him to continue to improve, and he has a guy in front of him that he can really do that with. It might be rough at times. It wasn't. He went out there and he handled it like a true professional, like a real champion does, and he put the icing on the cake, man, with that left hook, and that's going to live on. Maybe a lot of people didn't see that fight live. It was at 7 a.m. this morning. I was in bed with my dogs watching that fight on my phone. But it was that knockout will live on way beyond the eyes that watch it live.
And it's one of those knockouts when you're bowing to the crowd while they're counting, you have it done. Brian Norman Jr., very bright future for him as it makes news here. You will see it on Boxing Scene Today. We'll know his next move. Jimmy Smith alongside Chris Algieri. Robert Garcia, thank you so much for tuning in. Check us out and find out why millions are watching.